E mā tahe atu ana a Waikamo I te rā waki me te aroha ko ingo ki ngā kaikari waro I turakina iho rā I te tōnuitanga o rātou nā ao I te rua waro o Pike River I Mawhera I te rā wiki. By reading these names, we celebrate your lives. Conrad Adams, 43. Malcolm Campbell, 25. Glenn Cruz, 35. Alan Dixon, 59. Zen Drew, 21. Chris Duggan, 31. Joseph Dunbar, 17. Daniel Herc, 36. John Hale, 45. David Hoggard, 33. Richard Holling, 41. Andrew Hurren, 32. Jacob Yonker, 47. William Johnson, 49. Ricky Keane, 28. Terry Kitchen, 41. Samuel Mackey, 26. Michael Monk, 23. Francis Marden, 41. Stuart Mudge, 31. Kane Nipa, 33. Peter O'Neill, 55. Milton Osborne, 54. Brendan Palmer, 27. Benjamin Rockhouse, 21. Peter Roger, 40. Blair Sims, 28. Josh Ufa, 25. And Keith Valley, 62. Haere koutou ki te huinga o te kahurangi, ki te pūnanga o te tangata, hoki ngā kore ki muri. Ka te tiwi hoki rawa mai ki a tātou o te ao tūroa nei. Joining me today from Christchurch is the chairman of Te Runanga o Ngai Tahu, Mark Solomon. Tēnā koe, Mark.
Tēnā koe ho.
E hoa, 29 miners have died in Te Waipounamu. What's the feeling there for Ngai Tahu?
It's a tragedy. We have some families that are immediately affected. Of course, all of our people on Te Taupōtini, they're part of that community. It's a tragedy for everybody.
How does iwi participate at times like this, Mark?
All we can do is send our aroha, our support. We'll be there whatever we're needed.
The memorial service is set for next Thursday at 2 o'clock. How will Ngai Tahu participate in that service?
I've no doubt I've been invited to the one in Christchurch, but I prefer to go to one on the West Coast. And I've no doubt that our Runanga over there will be fully participating as members of the community.
And Makawhio, how have they been participating in this whole incident?
I think you have to understand the West Coast community. It's a very close-knit community. Any tragedy like this affects the whole region. So, of course, the whole region at the moment is in mourning and in shock. But they will pull through. They always do.
It hasn't been a happy time down there. The earthquake, it was the 5th most expensive ever natural disaster in the world this year. 2 major disasters in Te Waipounamu. From a Māori point of view, and I've heard some people talking about it on radio and on television, some of them are saying that these events are a tohu of some kind. What do you make of these events?
I won't say it was a tohu, but it was a horrible experience, both the earthquake and, of course, the disaster on Pike River. I'm not looking at it as a tohu. It's just something that happens. It's part of nature, and we just have to ride it through it.
Let's just talk about the earthquake for a little while. Aftershocks are still happening there in Christchurch, one with a magnitude of nearly 0.3, 10 km south of Christchurch, Friday afternoon. How are people doing in Christchurch at the moment?
A lot of nerves are pretty frayed. You see it a lot with the children. A lot of kids, you can see that they're as nervous as anything. We're riding it out. It is getting a bit better. We haven't had In fact, the 3.9 didn't even feel it. I felt one a couple of days or a week ago when I came back from the North Island, home for 5 minutes and a 0.5 hit. You've just got to deal with it.
Have Māori seen any financial benefit from the fundraising events that have been held in Christchurch?
We have a fund that we've been raising, but it's for the community, and all of our people that are in need are being looked after through both the Merrill Fund and through our own. But there's not many people coming asking for help. We're a community that's pretty tight. The earthquake has brought everyone together. So it's been, in that sense, it's been quite amazing how the communities have pulled together.
What about the Marae in Christchurch and around Christchurch? How have they been affected?
They've all come through it quite well. Some minor damage. We were a bit slow opening up because we wanted to have them all checked out by the engineers before we allowed people on. But they're all open and operating. And tomorrow morning we open a new whare at Rapaki.
You know, there's been talk around mining applications from Māori tribes. There's been talk with the government about mining on Māori land. What's Ngai Tahu's involvement when it comes to mining applications into Waipounamu?
Well, actually, there was no talks with the government about mining on Māori land. The meeting that was held with the government was specifically to ask, could we set up a framework so iwi katoa could engage in a dialogue with the national government over their plans around mining and over oil exploration. There was no talk about mining.
Is Ngai Tahu open to mining minerals other than Pounamu?
Ngai Tahu, in their submission on the Crown's plea to mine the conservation estate, we take a very cautious approach. We would look at every application on a case-by-case basis. And we would certainly be opposed to the government making the dock estate easier, more free and open for mining.
In terms of a case-by-case basis, if the government was to tell Ngai Tahu that some of the land that's under Ngai Tahu jurisdiction contains some very wealthy mineral base, would you then decide, you know, even if it is Māori land, you might mine it?
We would have to look at it. If it has detrimental environmental impacts, then I would say that Ngai Tahu would say no. It would have to be on a case-by-case basis. What are the effects? How do you mitigate before we'd be engaged?
Just want to talk about the new Marine and Coastal Bill now, Mark. You were told by Treaty Negotiations Minister Chris Finlayson that only 10% of New Zealand's coast would come under the bill, and only a few iwi will get anything out of that, and in fact Ngai Tahu would get nothing. Is that correct?
He didn't say that we would get nothing. He said that we had no rights. Because we've had a land claim, his argument, that extinguished our rights to the foreshore seabed. I immediately disputed that and simply saying our settlement is quite explicit. We can take no claims against the Crown on any issue that happened prior to September 1992. The Crown only took ownership of the foreshore seabed under the 2004 Act. They had assumed that they owned it, but they didn't actually have any enactment of Parliament that gave them that ownership until 2004. In our view, it is a contemporary claim. In our land claim, there was no discussion on the foreshore seabed.
So your concerns around the Marine and Coastal Area Bill is testing systems for customary rights. Are they real, these concerns of yours?
We think they're very real. We think the tests of continuous, contiguous, exclusive are tests that the majority of iwi have no opportunity of passing. And in some ways, I think it's an insult to the culture of Māoridom. This concept of exclusive. If you're exclusive, how do you practice manaaki?
So Ngai Tahu is against the bill?
We're against parts of the bill. Parts of the bill we believe are unworkable.
Mark, what's your response to criticism that the iwi leaders group, which you're a part of, is elitist and operating behind closed doors with the Prime Minister and other ministers?
I fail to see how I'm elitist or any of the iwi leaders, given the fact that I'll take the foreshore seabed. I received a mandate from 42 iwi to approach the government about setting up a framework of dialogue on the foreshore seabed. And that mandate was given to me at Te Hopu. Everything that we have discussed with the Crown has been placed in front of all iwi in the country. if that's being elitist, so be it.
Mark, we celebrated the kaupapa of White Ribbon this week, Men Against Violence. Paula Bennett delivered a speech to the iwi leaders group in August this year, and in that speech she challenged iwi leaders to help pay for child abuse services. How receptive are you, Ngai Tahu, to this idea?
We're not receptive at all. The simple reality is that we had a system across the country that worked to help our children be placed within the extended family. It was called matua whāngai. That process was pushed aside by the government, and social welfare through SIPs took over. They are now having difficulty with placing Māori children within the extended families. They need to sit down and talk with us, and they need to get back to the old processes that worked. She raised it to hopu hopu that Ngai Tahu has 80 children in care, and named or gave the numbers of the other tribes. The reality is, with all of the all the figures she gave equated to less than 0.1% of those tribes' populations. So it needs to be put into its context. While it is unacceptable that any of our children are under care, it is a very small minority of our men that are actually abusing their children and their women.
Mark, you formed some really good, solid relationships with other tribal groups, especially Tainui, over the years. In terms of tino rangatiratanga and how you would translate that in today's society, in today's world, does tino rangatiratanga translate to money?
Of course it doesn't, but if you want to have programs for your people, they cost money. If you want to have communications with your people, it costs money. If we want to travel to talk from Christchurch to Wellington with the government, it costs money. So we have to have an asset base. The whole rationale behind the forming of the iwi chairs and the iwi leaders was so that we could together discuss the macro issues that affected all of us. And I'm afraid you need money to be able to do those sort of things.
Kia ora rawa te koe, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on Marae.
My pleasure, thank you.